Get ready for the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. It's still
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Steel Real Fest Show, February 9th, 2012, episode number 104. 104 straight weeks of the Steel Real Fest Show. We are still rocking and kicking some major ass. Thank you for joining us this week. I am the champ, Jeff Peck. And joining me this week, reuniting the wrestling podcast tag team champions of the world. Welcome back to the show, the editor-in-chief of CamelClutchBlog.com, the former host of Pro Wrestling Radio, ECW, CZW, ROH announcer, the one and only Eric Gargiulo. Eric, how are we this week, my man?
Jeff, doing great. Real happy to be back on the show. Apologize for not making last week's show because I was really excited to talk Royal Rumble, but something came up at the last minute. But no, real excited to be here, and looks like we got a lot on the plate this week.
Yeah, we do. It is getting closer and closer to WrestleMania 28. The road to WrestleMania is upon us. Lots to talk about. I know you wanted to get right into it here, so we'll go off of what we talked about last week, and that is the Royal Rumble. Eric, on last week's show, myself, Benny Lopez, and Captain Obvious, we all discussed disdain, quite frankly, for the Royal Rumble and the match itself, the lack of participants, and we even said that it may be one of the worst Royal Rumbles of all time. I know you were very vocal about the Royal Rumble on your Twitter, as well as various blogs at CamelClutchBlog.com. So I ask you this, Eric, the Royal Rumble 2012 edition. I know you've seen just as many as all of us, probably all of them now, just like all the great wrestling fans that listen to this show. Is the 2012 Rumble one of the worst Rumbles of all time?
Absolutely, absolutely, and you know, and that's a pretty bold statement because there have been some crappy Rumbles, but you know, over the history of the Royal Rumble matchup, the majority of Rumbles have been pretty good, and it's really not a hard match to screw up if you think about it. It's one of what I always used to like about it as when I was younger, when the Rumble first started, I think it was '88, it was one of the few matches that you had where it was all action. And I mean, you get a lot of matches like that now, but back then, you know, during the late '80s and even you know, those early couple of years of the '90s, you didn't get a lot of high action matches in the WWE, but this was a one match that from start to finish, it was just nonstop action. And, you know, what was always really cool about the Rumble that I thought was, besides the fact that you got all this nonstop action, was seeing different guys square off that normally don't square off, you know, heel and baby face and tag partner against tag partner. And, you know, I mean, you could look at the Rumbles throughout the years and talk about specific moments in the Rumble, and that specifically was huge, always when they would square off. And, you know, it's sad because those days are lost now. You know, you're not going to get those big square offs anymore. You know, they tried to do it last year, if you remember, with Randy Orton and John Cena when they squared off and tried to make a big deal out of it, and nobody cared. And that was, you know, one of the hottest crowds ever to see a Rumble was the one last year. And this year, it just, you know, the product is so watered down and everybody's all mixed around and everybody wrestles everybody. And, you know, everybody's kind of at that same level where, you know, when they go at it in the Rumble, it's really not that big of a deal. It almost comes off as a glorified, you know, Raw or SmackDown, not even a main event, like a mid-carder. And, that's what I felt about this Rumble. And even last year was just great. I thought last year was one of my favorites of all time. And a lot of it had to do with the crowd. The crowd was just awesome last year, and the crowd was not very good this year, but I can't blame them because, I sat there and watched the Rumble, and I felt like I was waiting for something to happen. It just felt like it was just really underwhelming. It would be number 20 would come out, and I think to myself, all right, nothing's happened so far. Something's going to happen. And then by the time you get number 30 out there, it's just like, wow, this is really just a whole lot of nothing going on here. So, just real disappointing. No real fresh matchups or angles or incidents. I think they dropped the ball on a lot of levels there because I still think there were some creative things they could have done. As far as Sheamus winning, it was underwhelming because the next night on Raw, they barely acknowledged it. He came out at the beginning of the show, and that was pretty much it. And, and you and I will talk about this, I'm sure, today. I mean, maybe we could talk about it now, but I think the Elimination Chamber has a lot to do with it. This whole push at one point in the Rumble was that the winner got to go to WrestleMania and challenge the champion, which I thought was a great hook. But over the last couple of years, they throw this elimination pay-per-view on right after that, which completely dilutes it because not only do you have guys getting a title match that didn't win the Rumble, but you have 12 guys, wrestling for the title, the next month. And 2 of those guys could go to WrestleMania. You have 6 in the one match, 6 in the other match, one guy in each match is the champion. But for all intents and purposes, the belt's up for grabs. And, you put this big push towards the Rumble, and it's so great when these guys would win in the past, but then, just 3 weeks later, you're seeing, R-Truth and Kofi Kingston and Cody Rhodes challenge for the title and get an opportunity at WrestleMania. I love the idea, and I really enjoyed last year's Elimination Chamber matches, but I just think the timing's all wrong. I think you got to do them 6 months apart.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I remember the intrigue a little bit was, I think I'm going to go back to 2 years ago, Elimination Chamber win. Shawn Michaels came out, super kicked The Undertaker, led to their match at WrestleMania 26. Jericho had won the title that night, leading to the feud with Edge. So they've had interesting storyline development there, but I couldn't agree more. When it comes to the Elimination Chamber, it is watering down the Royal Rumble match. And we talked about this on last week's show here, Eric, but as you were just talking, I was going through the list here of former world champions that were at least the first 20 people. You have The Miz as one, Mick Foley, but he's not an active competitor. The Great Khali came back for no reason whatsoever, but he's not a threat to win the world title. Booker T's not a threat to win the world title. Dolph Ziggler is considered a former world champion. He is a threat, but certainly didn't look like it in the match itself. Then you had over 20. Sheamus is a former world champion. He obviously won it. Jack Swagger is, but I don't think anybody even remembers that reign. Randy Orton was a favorite. Chris Jericho was a favorite, obviously. You and I both picked those guys separately. And then the Big Show coming out at number 30. When you look at a participant level, and not to get sidetracked here, but just to discuss this real quick before we get back in Elimination Chamber talk, from a participant level, this was by far one of the weakest. When Alex Riley is coming out as the number 2 entrant into the Royal Rumble, usually those number 1 and number 2 spots are left for guys that are actually wrestling on Raw and SmackDown. Alex Riley has been doing dark matches and WWE Superstars matches. Really made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Justin Gabriel, a guy who's been on Superstars, Primo. Granted, he's a tag team champion. Then Ricardo Rodriguez, just an announcer, no wrestling background on WWE or on Raw or SmackDown television. Maybe he had 1 or 2 tag team matches with Alberto Del Rio. But from that level, Eric, participant-wise, I remember as a fan, it was right around the 2000s, late 90s, you'd watch these Rumble matches, and honestly, and this was even during the Internet era, you really didn't know who was going to win these matches because there were so many competitors and so many twists and turns that could lead to some sort of WrestleMania main event. You look at the entrants here, The Miz was obviously a potential favorite. Cody Rhodes, possibly. Ziggler, Sheamus, Randy Orton, Chris Jericho. I mean, there were less competitors that had there was more competitors who did not have a chance than there were competitors who actually had a reasonable chance of headlining WrestleMania. When you look at it that way, it made no sense. And we brought this up on last week's show as well, and I want to get your thoughts here. They teased the Rumble match that any champion could be involved. CM Punk nor John Cena, John Cena's not a champion anymore, but CM Punk nor Daniel Bryan's in the match. Neither is John Cena. Why would they tease that vignette before the week prior to the Royal Rumble, get people's fans thinking, and not even execute on that?